Hello, baseball world. My name's Ariel. This is my dad, Fred, and we're here to talk about all news Phillies. To start, the impending trade deadline. There's been a lot of Phillies names thrown around on the table. The biggest so far, veteran second baseman Chase Utley. Now, what do you have to say about all this talk about Chase Utley leaving the team?
Well, the Phillies they have to start thinking about the future right now, and the thing about Chase Utley is that he is a key part of this team. He's the hustle and heart of the team as well. So talking trading a guy like that's really difficult. I've heard things said about him going to California, whether it's San Diego, Los Angeles. I'd like to think the Phillies realize the value of keeping him. It's kind of like when Brian Dawkins left the Eagles. I mean, Chase Utley is the heart and soul of this team on the field. So to lose him in any manner, he's got the knee issues, but he's coming around, and I think he's got it manageable now. So he's playing very well. He's a good piece to trade, but again, you hate to give up the heart and soul of your team.
You hate to give up a veteran presence as he's been in the clubhouse with all the young guys you've got in the bullpen
Right.
coming up, all the young guys like Cody Ashley, who's just come up recently. All these young guys, you need a veteran presence there like Chase Utley.
Right, right. The thing about the Phillies too is that a lot of players are playing out their contracts this year. Not only Utley, but Michael Young, the third baseman, Carlos Ruiz, who's not exactly having a great year this year, but his contract's running out. Dominic Brown needs to be re-signed, as does Ben Revere. Revere, of course, had that hot streak before he hurt his foot, and he's been on the sideline for a while. And then you have Roy Halladay, who's also coming back from a key injury. They say he's working out, coming around better. He's signed for another year after this year. And then you have the two other players who were on the World Series team, Ryan Howard and Jimmy Rollins. It's tough to watch the way the Phillies are playing now because that one game in Detroit, the last game, that one inning, where everything fell apart. They gave up 8 runs on 2 hits, and I think that tells you that they have to do something to change up the team a little bit.
That one inning just basically shows how this entire season has played out. Mistakes,
it was terrible.
Bad defense, bad pitching, bad bullpen.
Yeah.
Just shows how this season has gone.
Yeah, and that, of course, part of the 8-game losing streak that really is pretty much taking the Phillies. They're still alive mathematically, but realistically, it's tough the way that it's set up now. After losing 8 games, the Braves have not exactly been losing. They've been winning, and you have the 2 wild cards, but there's a lot of teams involved in wild cards. So.
And we think there's a lot of games left in the season. We've still got about half the season left.
We have 2 months.
But as the Phillies are playing right now, and the teams in front of them, like the Braves, are not stopping. This division, realistically, it's not the greatest division.
No.
When you've got teams like the Nationals, the Marlins, and the Mets. But no one's out of it until you're mathematically eliminated. No one is out. But it's been a very tough season for the Phillies.
Well, if they do make trades, they're obviously gonna not. It's hard to say what they're gonna get back. I think they're gonna have to shoot for getting prospects mostly to rebuild this program a little bit. Their minor league system doesn't really have anybody. I mean, we're watching Darren Ruff struggle a little bit this year now that he's up. There's not much on the farm, so they're going to have to do some creative trading if they do anything.
If anything, they're gonna have to build for the future.
Exactly.
Saying this year is a lost cause may be a stretch right now, but the Phillies have got to focus on rebuilding for the future.
And of course, the other thing that you have to wonder if Charlie Manuel's going to be here after this year. I think this might be the final year for Charlie.
It's definitely tough to think. He's had great seasons with the Phillies.
Back
to the 2008 World Series team. He's had his good seasons. He's had his bad. It's tough to say if he'll be back or not.
It's been an interesting run ever since Jimmy Rollins predicted that the Phillies would win the division in 2007, that they'd beat the Mets and they'd win the division. And the following year, of course, they won the World Series and got back to it in 2009. But since then, you can see that one step down.
You've seen the steady decline of losing in the World Series, losing in the divisional, losing in the beginning and not making the playoffs at all.
And watching Howard get injured on the very last play of that playoff series against the Cardinals.
It's been tough to be a Phillies fan lately.
Yeah, it's time for a few changes, and they have some pieces to trade. Cliff Lee's probably the biggest one, because I know a lot of teams are going to want that extra pitcher.
His name has also been on the top of a lot of teams' radars, especially the Boston Red Sox. There's been a lot of talk between Boston and Philadelphia about Cliff Lee.
Yeah, yep.
So there's a chance Cliff Lee might go. I personally don't think that's a good idea. He's one of your best pitchers. He's having a tremendous season, coming off of last year's terrible season.
Yeah, it's funny how Lee had the year that he had last year. Now it seems like Hamels has that.
It seems like he's passed the torch along to Hamels. He's like, all right, I had the bad season.
Unreal.
Now it's your turn.
Right.
I think Hamels just signed that really big contract. He's here for 6 years.
Yeah.
He's got a big salary too.
If I'm Ruben Amaro, this is going to be a tough trade market because knowing that the Phillies have to sell, I don't know that other teams are going to give them a lot.
Based on who we're going to sell, and speaking of some of the guys we talked about, Ryan Howard has been out. Ryan Howard's been on the DL since July 6th. He tore his meniscus in his left knee. The original timetable for that was 6 to 8 weeks, which would put him back, could be around mid to late August.
Right.
But Ryan Howard said, I don't have a timetable for it. I'm just going to wait until I don't feel any more pain. Now, that doesn't really sound very reassuring, does it?
Well, no, it doesn't. And where the Phillies are in the season, I don't know that it would be such a bad idea to let them sit out the season, get the whole off season to rehab it, and then come back in 2014 fresh, ready to go, get in shape, and get as healthy as possible and make another run at it in 2014.
Well, hopefully, that seems like the smart idea, because it doesn't seem like he's going to be 100% this year.
No.
He said he's been playing for at least a year and a half with these injuries.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be best to just shut him down, let him work, let him rest, let him, work out the knees in the off season, come back spring training, hopefully 100% healthy.
And if Darren Ruff truly is your first baseman of the future, which really is probably his best position, let him play first base a little more often.
Well, let him take over the first base duties for the rest of the season. As long as, he's proving that he deserves to be here. Because you've got guys like Kevin Franzen, who can play almost anywhere. You've got John Mayberry, who's played some first base.
Well, but as far as the likelihood of who's going to get traded, Cliff Lee's a key person, and Michael Young's another one. Personally, I think he's kind of raw at third base. He makes plays and then he doesn't make plays. So
it's been hit and miss this year with Michael Young.
Third base doesn't look like his best position to me.
When we heard he was coming to Philadelphia, we thought, all right, it's a good guy. He's a veteran guy. He's going to bring that presence.
Yeah.
He's going to bring that defense. He's got offense when he can.
Yeah.
You would think, all right, this could be good. And it hasn't really panned out that way so much.
It's been a weird season. The only reason Atlanta's really that far ahead of anybody is the way they started the season. They won, 12-1. They started the season, and they haven't looked back since. Washington, we think the Phillies are bad. Washington is having a terrible season, too.
And they were talking about being the team to beat after last year's finish.
They had the pitchers, and Harper, of course, and Worth and all them. They should have been better than that, but they had just as much trouble scoring runs as the Phillies.
But moving on from that, another name that's been on a lot of people's minds, Jonathan Papelbon. He's made some big headlines lately. Specifically, his comments after the Phillies came back from Detroit after their 8-game losing streak. Papelbon definitely had a lot to say. That includes, when asked about the losses and everything, he said, "I definitely didn't come here for this." Now, there's more to that, so we can't just take that. We have to add the context into it. Later on in the interview, he was asked, if he wants to be here. He said, "No, I would like to stay here. But if I'm going to have to put up with this year after year, then no, I don't want to be here. Why would you? Why would anybody?"
Right.
Now, Jonathan Papelbon's been known to say what's on his mind. That can be a good thing. That can also be a bad thing. Where do you think this falls on the scale?
Well, it would have been nicer if he had said something about himself improving. What I like about athletes who say, "Hey, look, I'm not playing that well, and I'm part of the problem. I got to fix myself." But he doesn't. He doesn't really ever say that, and he's got a reputation for being that
Little,
guy that
yeah.
creates a little rift in the clubhouse. Just ask the Boston Red Sox. They're not too crazy about him, and saying things like that. I understand the frustration, but it's not the wisest thing to say, especially right after an 8-game losing streak has just happened. You know, uh,
And the fact that it seems like he never wants to put the blame on himself.
right,
He always
right,
wants to blame someone else for his struggles. Now, some of the time, it hasn't been his fault. But there's times where it has been, and he doesn't want to, I guess, accept it, that it's his fault, and that he needs to, as a sense, take the blame.
right. The closer's job is not easy because the pressure's on for them to close it out, as the saying
And
goes.
you're coming into games, 1 run leads, 2 run leads,
Yeah,
where it's your job to shut it down and help your guys win the game. It's not the easiest job
no,
in
no.
baseball, and closers can be have that mindset. That they can be a little crazy because they've got a tough job.
Absolutely.
So it's tough,
Yeah.
definitely for Jonathan Papelbon. And he's got his teammates have definitely backed him up here. Jimmy Rollins had an interesting comment when asked about what Papelbon said. He said, "The man has an opinion. There's nothing wrong with that." It's nice to see his teammates backing him up here. He also included, "No one wants to go out there and lose, and I think what happened out there in Detroit, it wasn't good. It was embarrassing." So if so if that's how he feels, you can't knock him for that.
No, no. Jimmy Rollins is another one that speaks his mind pretty well. Um, the thing about wanting to break records, what I would have said instead of saying that is to say, "Hey, look, I want to stay a Philly. I've been here this long, and well,
Well, that's foreshadowing something later. So we'll
yeah,
get to that.
Jimmy. I mean, it's great to have anybody's back on your team, and but Jimmy's been one that's been outspoken before, so for him to say something like that does not surprise.
It's it's just nice to know that when your teammate says something like that, that they've got your back,
Hmm.
that they know you're getting criticism for this, and they're backing you up
Right.
and letting you know, hey, I hear what you're saying. I agree with you. I'm here for you. So it's nice that Jimmy was there to back up Jonathan Papelbon and let him know, hey,
Right.
I got you.
Yep.
But now, going back to what you mentioned about Jimmy
Hmm.
Rollins, saying, when asked, Jimmy said he would not waive his no-trade clause. He also mentioned, "There are still a couple things I would like to be number one on the list of in this organization. So until those things are done, I'm not going anywhere." Sounds a little selfish.
A
Little
lot
bit.
selfish.
It seems like he's taking, he's putting it all on himself here. That it's his. I mean, he's got the no trade clause, so it's his decision if he wants to be here.
Right.
But you gotta say something better than that. You can't
Yeah.
go with the record.
Like I was saying, the one thing he did wrong, in my opinion, was to say that I want to break the records of our team franchise. If you say something like I want to play better and turn this thing around, and everything else will take care of itself. Something like that, a little more generic than me there, because that's really how that comes across. And yeah, all players want to set records, but to actually say it the way he said it,
To
it
actually
doesn't come
go
out. It
out,
doesn't sound right.
to actually come out and say, "Until I break these records,
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere."
Right. Right. Yeah.
And
It's not team oriented.
it,
That comment's not team
and
oriented.
kind of going to that, he hasn't really lived up to his 2007 MVP season.
Not
Ever
at all.
since then, it seems like, along with the Phillies' decline later on, it seems like he's been on a steady decline.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's got the defense. We can't deny that.
He's still a
got
great
tremendous
defensive player.
defense.
Um,
The offense doesn't seem to be there anymore.
Yeah, and when he gets the leadoff position and gets those base hits and gets on, things happen, but he doesn't do it enough. He doesn't take first pitches a lot of times, and I kind of watched him. He's taken a few more pitches now, but Jimmy's not your prototypical leadoff hitter. He doesn't have the patience for it. Um, and when he does pop up or just jog up the first base line. It drives all of us crazy. I just like to see a little more Chase Utley and Jimmy Rollins. If he was more like Chase and that whole middle infield was like that, you'd have a much better scenario.
And we saw that one time when Jimmy didn't hustle up the first base line. Manuel benched him.
That's right.
I think that needs to be done more. If these guys aren't hustling, not just Jimmy Rollins, everyone on the team, if they're not hustling a ball out, even if they know they're not going to make it, you actually don't know what's going to happen. There could be a bad throw. There could be, you couldn't make the catch.
As the veteran on the team, you can't be jogging up first base lines. You just can't. You have to show the way.
You got to run the play out.
Exactly.
Finish it until the very last second, because again, you don't know. It could be an easy ground ball. You don't know what's going to happen.
Well, let's be honest here. The Phillies spoiled us from 2007 to 2009.
All those great division, five
straight division titles. We enjoyed the ride. It was great. It's a shame they couldn't win that second World Series. It would have been great to beat the Yankees, being as historic as they are in baseball. Since then, it just has been a steady downhill decline. That loss to the St. Louis Cardinals. What bothers me about that season is that the Cardinals only got into the playoffs because the Phillies swept the Braves in that final three-game series.
They snuck in and managed to win the
That was the only way St. Louis was going to get into the the playoffs, and here they are, World Series champions that year. That was extremely ironic, but that's baseball. So getting to the playoffs is the key.
Anything can happen when the playoffs start.
Right. So the Phillies futuristically have to think, we have to find a way to get back into the playoffs, because once you get there, anything's possible. You want to go into September with a nice hot September, like winning 15 to 20 games. More not like 20, because that'd be 20 and 10 or so. But you want to build that momentum. So the Phillies, they need a fresh start in some way. So hopefully they'll do some creative training, get some new faces in there that want to play a little hustle baseball and show that they want to be a Philadelphia Philly.
As we've talked about, this season. It may not be this season, because we're almost in August, and they're quite a few games below 500 at this point. They did just win today. Speaking of that, they did break the 8-game losing streak by beating the Giants. It was a good game for the Phillies. They're a nice way to break out. We had Carlos Ruiz get his first home run of the season. Marco Young hit a home run. John Mayberry had a good day, and John Lennon's been a surprise presence on the mound.
Right, he gave him 7 strong innings in that game against the Giants, and then the bullpen held it for the win. But the Giants, that's another story. World Series champions last year, now they're under 500, so that's how baseball works. You just have to find ways to fix things.
Happen.
Gotta fix it, Phillies. Gotta fix it.
Alright, well, I think that's all we've got for today. Thank you for listening. It's a bit longer than I had wanted this to be. Hopefully you'll watch the whole thing. Maybe you won't. I don't know. If you got anything, comments below. Let us know. If you want us to talk about anything else, I'm sure my dad would love to talk baseball. Any sports at all.
Sports are great. Sports are wonderful.
We don't just have to talk about baseball. Just if you want us to talk about something, let us know. Comments below. But it's been fun, and we'll see you again sometime.
Episode 2 coming up.
All right, bye guys.